Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. This is Craig Scarborough and tonight I'll be doing something a little bit different. In the past I've been uploading games of Inside Pitch from the 1980s, and tonight we're going to be doing something a little bit different. This is actually a first look at Inside Pitch Advanced. So we'll be going over what it is, when it's coming, so on and so forth. But first I want to give a little bit of background. First of all, so Chris Davis is the creator of the game, but he's given permission to me to basically outline what my thoughts are on Inside Pitch Advance, what the reason for it coming to pass, and what it's going to entail. But this story kind of starts, I think it was this past summer, when I'd written some software that allowed me to automate Inside Pitch Basic, I'll say, the regular Inside Pitch game. So it allowed Chris to see some of the intricacies of how the game interplayed, and if there are any inconsistencies or anything's out there that he wanted to change. This has been a long process by Chris, meaning he has wanted for a long time. There are certain things that, hey, this is his baby, right? It's been around for almost 20 years now. And as time goes on, you kind of wish that, hey, I wish I could have included this, or maybe I wish the data had been around to implement this factor. So it's been a long time in coming. But as he mentioned to me in an email, houses are built on a foundation, and I guess through some of the stuff that I supplied to him, some of the data, he was able to build a brand new second story on top of the first story, which is Inside Pitch. So thus, Inside Pitch Advance was born. First questions will be like, hey, when is this coming out? And the bottom line is, I don't know. I don't think Chris knows. It's still a work in progress. But we'll go into greater detail as to what the game itself entails. And hey, we've all seen advanced versions of other games out there, right? Whether it be Stratomatic, whether it be APA, really name your game out there. Games evolve over time, and this is essentially an evolving of the an evolution of Inside Pitch. So Chris has had a lot of ideas. We're still working through some ideas, so this is not the final version. It's changing on an almost daily basis, but I wanted to give everyone a first look as to what is coming down the pike, and I'm sure there's going to be some question. Well, hopefully I have a list of questions here that people will be asking, but I will just say on the Delphi forums, Chris has essentially said that yeah, make a video or something, and then just let everybody know, ask questions, because he's open, and the nice thing is he also listens, right? So as people over the years have said, I wish it had this, I wish the game had that. Well, he's been listening, and I think you'll see that tonight. So, put your seatbelt on, guys. This is Inside Pitch Advance, a first look. We'll go to the next slide. So, goals of Inside Pitch Advance. Now, these are what I deem them to be. This is not an official thing from Chris saying, Craig, these are the official goals, but this is what I'm seeing as he's progressed through this process. So the first thing is be as true to the original Inside Pitch mechanics as possible. And why? Because you don't want to make a brand new game, right? I think Inside Pitch is interesting. I think it's always piqued my interest. It's always been, well, I can't say it's always been my game of choice, but it's certainly when it was introduced to, I'm like, wow, this is different. I love the interplay of the pitcher and batter. But there are some things that people have, don't like this part of the game, and Chris has been listening. So first things first, if you've played Inside Pitch, you will know a lot of Inside Pitch Advanced right from the get-go. It won't be a brand new experience for you. Secondly, Chris has really been focusing on streamlining of the gameplay, and I'm going to go further in detail in all these portions or all these aspects of the game. People have complained about re-rolls in the past, and so Chris has done his darndest to minimize that, as well as one of the great things about Inside Pitch is that the play results are on the cards, right? So he's basically expanded that. And then finally, keeping those two keeping those two things in mind, what can we add or what can he add to the game that allows you to see more of the game, to make it more realistic? And I think you'll be surprised with the level of depth. As we were debating some emails back and forth as to what I plan on talking, he said even he was surprised as far as the brand new functionality that's been introduced. So before I end this slide, is inside pitch going away? No, absolutely not. Good grief. I think he's finally going to have 1956 through 2024 when 2024 is introduced. But inside pitch, if you know and love it and you want to continue playing it, continue to do so. The inside pitch card sets will be continue to be made far into the future. And the bottom line is inside pitch advance may not be your cup of tea. It's really up for you to decide. You may just, hey man, I like inside pitch. It's great. It does everything I wanted to do. Fantastic. Then just keep plugging away on it. And but there'll be some people like myself that once I understood some of the things he was trying to do, I was like, oh man, can't wait to get my hands on this. So I'm fully engaged with Inside Pitch Advance. Have I ever played a game? No. This is brand new, right? And I'll be showing off some cards probably in a later video. But seen some of the rules, seen what the cards look like. But as a game been played, I know Chris has obviously, but and I know maybe a couple others out there have, but I have not. But I do know what's going into it. So let's move on. Let's actually see the first section. So staying true to the original Inside Pitch and then streamlining gameplay. How's that being done? So bottom line is, if you play Inside Pitch, you'll be familiar with about 90% of the IP advanced content. And by the way, that is a little play on words. It was going to be IP2, but he decided, and again, this could change, who knows, but Inside Pitch to Inside Pitch Advanced, because the acronym of IPA is a beer. Some people don't like it. Some people love IPAs, so it's an acquired taste, just like Inside Pitch Advanced. So again, if you're a solid true blue, oh man, I love Inside Pitch, and I can't think of looking at anything else, fine. You can absolutely do that into the future. But Inside Pitch Advance will have some of the things I'll be going over in a little bit. So as you can see, minimization of rerolls. That's one thing that he's really been strong on is, people complain about having to do rerolls. Let me see if I can use mechanics that reduce that. So there's a new mechanism for pickoff plays with more outcomes based on the base. So it's not just a pickoff. It'll, of the lead runner. Now it's, hey, if there's a runner on first, hey, if there's a runner on second, and it's all streamlined. So I think you'll be pretty impressed. Wild pitches and pass balls, if nothing happens, you don't re-roll. You go to the batter card. And that's been implemented inside the mathematics surrounding the game. So again, just a small piece, but it's going to make gameplay faster. Now we're getting to me some really significant things. So more intuitive card-driven results. Again, results in the card rather than having to look up charts. So intuitive card-driven results and individual ratings for grounded double plays, sacrifice bunts, and hit and run plays. No longer do you have to say, hey, what's the guy's strikeout rating? Let me look up a chart to see where his hit and run fits or where his sacrifice bunt fits. Not butt, bunt. This is actually on the player's card now. And so it's built in. So you'll be able to see it like, oh, a 17, that's a sac bunt. Again, play the game as you want to play it. You can ignore it, but it's built in right there to, typically use the how many times the guy is sac bunted in real life, how many times the hit and run was on real life, and how it affects the statistics. So again, this is card driven. You don't have to go to a chart. More intuitive card-driven approach for runner advancement hits the outfield. That's been the number one beef, I think, for people for a long time. Oh, advancing runners on a base hit or double, it's hard. The interesting thing is, I think it's hard because it doesn't come up very often. It comes up probably 2 or 3 times a game. But once you get the hang of it, you've got it. However, he switched it up here, and it is a chart-driven approach. but the charts really minimize the number of any kind of lookups or the number of rerolls that are required to come up with this chart-driven approach. So I think it'd be pretty impressed. I think a lot of the charts now are, this is the result, rather than compare this to that and compare that to this. It's like sometimes it's like, if it's hit to center field, the guy advances an extra base. If it's not hit to center field, he does not. Now, the interesting thing is, people may say, wait. The base runner's base running rating doesn't apply. The arm rating doesn't apply. It does. It just applies within the constraints of the math to make sense. And what I mean by that, let's say an arm rating will be looked up 30% of the time and have an impact on the play 30% of the time with inside pitch. While you may not be doing an arm lookup on inside pitch advanced, it's still 30%. And I'm just throwing a number out there. So it's intuitive. It's based on real life data. It's based on the retro sheet data. So it works. And then finally here, removal of GDP positioning for infielders. I don't think he had that in initially, and then he added it because people felt that you should have, putting infielders in to play for the double play should have an impact on a double play, but they also should have an impact on the player's range. It's more a numbers-based approach now. And once I saw the chart, I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. So no longer do you have infielders in double play position. Now it's either in or back, and that's it. However, the impact is still there. Again, when I saw the chart, I was like, not quite mind blown, but it was like, wow, you're getting the same impact without having to make a whole series of changes based on additional positioning. So it's a minimization. It is a streamlining, and I think you'll find it pretty cool. So next slide. Let's actually talk about some of the new features. And I know you're reading ahead. That's fine. So new features again, greater diversity of the player's abilities due to an increase in the ratings range. Yes, rating ranges used to be 1 to 5, like for range, right? Certainly errors were always 1 to 20. Base running ratings were 1 to 5. It's now 1 to 7. And then what is it? Range is now 1 to 7 as well. So it's an eight-sided die. Yep. No longer is it a 6-sided die. It's an 8-sided die. So yes, that's a huge change. Yes, I've been looking up where to buy 8-sided dice because of this. So greater diversity of players' abilities. So there's a bigger range. No longer is it 1 to 5 for base running. Now it's 1 to 7. And in fact, I think it might be 1 to 8, but no, I'm sorry, it's 1 to 7. So new error types. Replaced an E with an EB for booted ball. So it's error on a booted ball. Brand new error type of EDO for drop balls by fielders. One thing that came up during the process was Chris realized that a throw across the infield can never be dropped by the first baseman, which is interesting, right? That should be I think that should be in there. You should, fantastic play by the shortstop, throws it over the first baseman, and he drops it. Well, now it's in there, so that's an EDO, and that's an automatic based on a different role. So it will happen in its frequency, which is not very often, but it's there now. So again, another part of the game that's been implemented. And then the bottom line here is due to the new error type of EDO and then the replacement of E with an EB, we still have EG, we still have ET, but since we have this additional error type, they're more accurately tuned to real world frequency. No longer does the game have to have like, an ET hit to the outfielder. It could potentially be a different type of error just because we're not getting enough errors here. So, okay, so moving on to the next one. Players are now rated for lefty-righty splits even if they do not fulfill minimum at-bat requirements. I love this. Now, I know Chris put this in the game because he didn't want people to take advantage of the system. You didn't want to be like in other games where I've got a guy who went 5 for 7 as a lefty against lefty pitching, so I'm going to bring him up as a pinch hitter in the bottom of the 9th inning in the Game 7 of the World Series and take advantage of that 5 for 7, even though every other year the guy proved to be terrible against lefty pitchers. It's just I'm going to take advantage of this small sample size and I'm going to milk this system. So what he basically said is, I'm going to make cards. This is for inside pitch. I'm going to make cards that don't have splits for those guys who don't have a minimum number of bats, both lefty and righty. Well, that's changed. And that doesn't mean if you bring up, and we go over, one of the guys we went over is John Lowenstein. John Lowenstein, as a lefty for the Orioles in like the late 70s and early 80s, was a typical complete platoon player, but he always he never had the minimum number of hits, bats against lefties to give him a proper split rating. That's changed. And the good thing about it is, let's say John Lowenstein went 2 for 3 one year. He's not going 2 for 3 against lefties. The data itself is being regressed to the mean. So he will be able to bat against lefties, but he's not going to do as well as he would against a righty hitter. So there is some, I guess, again, regression to the mean. So you can still bat John Lowenstein in a pinch against a lefty, but you're not going to be able to take advantage of that small sample size that would allow players seldom use against same-sided pitching to take advantage. And I love that because it happens all the time from what I'm playing. Okay, so moving on. Pitchers now affect the number of range plays they allow. This was something that had come up in the past. Some persons had asked, like, hey, a guy like Randy Johnson, his range plays because he's more of a true 3 outcome pitcher. We had a lot of strikeouts. So if he has a lot of strikeouts, how come he has the same number of range plays behind him? And so therefore, for a guy like Randy Johnson, maybe fielding isn't as important because he's striking out so many guys. Well, that's now in the game. So a guy like Randy Johnson will have a lesser tendency to have range plays come up when a ball is put in play. Let's see. Pitchers now affect the number of doubles they allow. I know this has been nitpicky because inside pitch is a true 3 outcome game engine. The pitcher affects home runs and then it's swung to the batter's card. Well, they can now affect doubles. Now, I will say it's subtle. It's not, I'm doing a double check. No, it only comes up in certain situations, but it allows the game engine to more fine tune a guy who potentially did not give up as many doubles as the next guy. And then finally, and I think this is really interesting as well, both pitchers and batters are affected whether there are runners in scoring position or no runners in scoring position. So, oh my gosh, is this clutch? I hate clutch. Clutch doesn't exist. Well, in the game, again, it is a subtlety. It is not something that's going to come up all the time. But if certain pitchers pitch better against, batters when runners are in scoring position, as well as vice versa. Same thing for batters. Some guys are more clutch than others. So it will come up, not very often, but enough to potentially, holy moly, it affected this game. So again, it's very subtle, but it allows guys like one of the guys I noticed, Dave Stewart, 1989, had a great ERA, but his peripheral statistics didn't really warrant it. And so essentially what he was a guy who, whether it was just 1 year or not, was able to bear down with runners in scoring position and prevent runs. So again, it's subtle. It's not going to be this every time there's a runner in scoring position, Dave Stewart does not allow a hit. No, not at all. It's something very subtle that comes up in certain not chart results, and certain card results, enough to make a subtle impact to say, hey, this may change the course of the game. So anyway, I find so both batters and pitchers will be affected by this. So find it interesting. All right, more new features. Opportunities for an out to turn into a hit based on fielder position. So if the infield's playing in and the ball is hit right to that fielder that's playing in, again, subtle times this can occur, but infrequently, but it can occur, and it's right off the card. You'll see if the infield's playing in, that turn it out into a single. Same thing with hit and runs. And you may be saying, well, I don't use the hit and run. Well, it's automated now in a much more intuitive manner, coming right off the card. And then you also see that there are certain plays where it's a G6, but if there's a runner on and the hit and run was on, that ball is going through the hole. So again, just a subtle strategy, and I'll say this again: subtle. It doesn't happen every time, But it's interesting because it can happen. And again, just provokes more of a or brings more of a strategic level and depth of play. Um, Moving to park cards. Park cards can now influence base hits by the batting side. This, I think, is huge. You'll now experience places like Yankee Stadium and their short deck in right field. A lot of home runs. I can't say a lot, but off the park card, there's many more opportunities for a home run for a lefty batter to hit that short deck in right field. Not so much for the righty, right? Fenway's Green Monster, you're going to see more home runs by righties. You actually see more doubles by lefties. Um, and again, I can't say this for every year, but for the cards I have, that is the truth. I find this awesome. You're gonna feel the impact of real stadiums based on those lefty righty splits. So do I put a lefty in? I'm in Yankee Stadium and the Yankees are down by 1 in the bottom of the ninth. It's gonna it's always like, well, I'm gonna do lefty lefty, but maybe I bring in a lefty because I can't give up a home run here. And then that'll bring up the righties on the Yankees, so they're not gonna have that short deck to take advantage of. More strategy. Okay. Park cards now include pop foul balls. That'll happen at third base, first base, as well as the catcher. So if there's an error on a pop foul ball, okay, batter's up again, but doesn't affect like the game situation. It's just the batter's up again, and there's an error called. There's a very small and subtle home field advantage. Again, this is just something that could come up very infrequently, but just enough to be like, interesting. Just one of those kind of interesting subtleties of, again, added depth of the gameplay. Also, this is a big one. Outfielders are now rated not only for their ability to discourage or encourage a batter taking an extra base, so there's still an arm rating, but there's also an arm basically thrown out rating. So there's 2 arm ratings for outfielders now. One is for their ability to minimize going for the extra base. But the second one is like, hey, maybe they didn't minimize it, but you got a guy with a great arm who would throw out a guy. And so that's in the game engine now as well, off of one chart. So again, very easy to use, comes up infrequently, but when it does come up, that could have a huge impact on the game. Do I just go for guys who discourage, have good arms as far as reducing extra bases, or do I look for guys to be thrown out? The game simulates that now. So, that being said, Craig, is this the complete new features of the game? No. Could things change? Yes. But this is what's been moving as we've been moving forward. A lot of these things have been introduced, and a lot of these things are staying. Is their ability to do more and more potentially? But that's up to Chris, right? So I just wanted to kind of shed some light on why I'm so excited about Inside Pitch Advanced, because once I saw these features and once I saw how they were streamlined into gameplay and how I didn't have to learn a brand new game, I was like, I'm all in. Let's go. When are these cards coming out? So there you go. So that brings up the next question. Are the cards changing? Yes. Just like other games have done as they've evolved over time, right? So, however, if you don't want to get Inside Pitch Advanced cards, you don't have to, right? If you like Inside Pitch, great. Inside Pitch is a great game. That's why I love it as well. But you can continue to play original Inside Pitch as well now and into the future. So yes, the cards are changing, and I will have a video showing off some of the cards. But so I'm sure they're gonna be like, oh, I don't want to replace all my cards. You don't, okay, you don't have to. But there'll be some people like, this is important to me. So, and if it's not, it's not. But if it is, there's an opportunity here to take advantage of it and, have all these brand new features built into the system. So yeah, the cards are changing. They're a little bit bigger because it's actually a little sneak peek. It's actually an 8x8 matrix now as opposed to 6x6. And you might say, why? Again, some of the ways baseball has changed with the 3 true outcomes. Having 6x6 sometimes it was difficult to get all the ratings, all the outcomes on like the pitcher card, for instance. With an 8x8, plenty of room now, and plenty of room to add, again, the streamlining, so to speak. There's one more thing I was going to say here. regarding the cards, but maybe I shall move on. The other thing about the cards is this is really where some of the stuff, some of the data, and some of the simulations that were done of as each new season comes out, we do a heck of a lot of simulations, but at least 100 seasons just to get them all online and make sure that the macro and the micro level statistics are happening the way they should be. So IPv4, those charts were basically the first iteration of that, determining some of the changes that needed to be made or could be made to more fine tune the system to be more realistic. Finally, Chris basically came up and said, like, look, and I'll have him clarify because this is my version of it, but the fine tuning could be done with IPv4, but then it became a question of, but what if I did this and what if I added this? And finally it became with IPv4, some of these things couldn't be done. And it was one of those moments where it's like, well, if we're going to make this change, why not go for the, shoot for the stars? And let's add all these different things that he's wanted to add for a long, long time. So that's really, I guess, part two of how this came to be. So bottom line is, are the cards changing? Yes. Inside pitch, I'll say classic, is always going to be there. Inside pitch advanced, yes, there will be new card sets. And then finally, when will inside pitch advanced be available? Don't know. Even as we roll out the seasons and we do the iterations, and then he makes a change and we run it again, and I never really know when he's going to say, okay, it's ready. They're creating a brand new game, even though it does have its roots in Inside Pitch Classic. Who knows when that process, when the person who's creating the game says, like, okay, now finally it's complete, because there could be further things in his head that he wants to add. So don't know when it's going to be made available. I just know that obviously it's getting closer. Hey, it's a lesson of time, right? I mean, as time marches on, things inherently will be getting closer. So will it be revamped and remodeled? Who's to say? I would venture to say yes, but this is the current snapshot of where we are, or where he is. Sorry, I keep on saying we. It's his game. And then finally, hey, Craig, if it's not available, why did you show this to us now? Well, first of all, he gave you permission. And it is getting closer, and it's getting closer to where cards have actually been printed to start testing. Now, that means, yes, things could change drastically. Drastically? No, I'm not going to say drastically, but things are probably going to change, when it actually gets played. Chris is a phenomenal Excel spreadsheet guy, so he can do a lot of the math in an Excel spreadsheet. Maybe not some of the interactions of different charts and everything like that interplay off each other, which a computer simulation can do. But so it's getting closer. Cards been printed, so we know we're getting. He's getting closer. But do we have an exact date? No. And then the bottom line is, and this is the last slide. So thank you very much for joining. The bottom line is that any questions can be asked in the Delphi forums. I'm going to make a post and say, hey, here's a video. You might want to check this out. But Chris is open, right? He wants to hear what people think. Certainly ask away as to what his thinking was behind these processes. And I'm highly anticipating this game. I just really like the way it flows. I like a lot of the card-driven results. The charts have been optimized, I'll say, as well as that wealth of new features. I cannot wait to take it for a spin. So that being said, thanks for joining with me tonight. And I will have a video probably showing off some of the cards, the way they look, and with some examples of how it gets streamlined. And then finally, I would like to play a game. And I'll talk a little bit about the helper that's being put together. And there'll probably be some videos on the helper itself. It's like, what the heck is the helper? What are you talking about? So anyway, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for, again, your kind comments in the past and everything like that. Hope to have more content of actual gameplay, whether it's Inside Pitch Classic or Advanced, because that's what I want to do. And I appreciate your kindness in actually watching some of these things. So that being said, thanks so much. And yeah, that's all. Have a good night. Take care.